Okay, looks like I'm recording. So, Trish, if you want to go ahead and share slides, we can get started. Great. Well, welcome everyone. We hope you've made it to this webinar on work-life balance in ocean-related marine science careers. My name's Trisha Thibodeau, and I am the president of the Society for Women in Marine Science. And we've been making a concerted effort as the steering committee. Ray Kadara is here as well as Trish Albano, our vice president, on really trying to increase our content we're providing to our chapters and also to the broader marine science community. So we wanted to do this webinar on work-life balance because we think it's really relevant to anybody that's in the marine science field. If you want to go ahead and advance the next slide, Trish. So in terms of what we'll be doing today, we'll have brief introductions for our amazing group of panelists that's here. We'll do a panel discussion on work-life balance for about 35-40 minutes and a Q&A from the audience for anyone that has additional questions for our panelists. And then at about the end of the first hour, we'll start our networking session where, depending on how many of you can stick around, we'll do some trivia as well as some get to know you games as a way to just increase our community here at SWMS. And most of our panelists should hopefully be able to stick around as well. And I just wanted to give those of you on the call an introduction to SWMS in case this is your first time joining us. So we're the Society for Women in Marine Science, and our mission is to bring together marine scientists of all career levels to discuss the diverse experiences of women, as well as the broader forms of race, gender, ethnicity that encompass diversity, and celebrate the research done by women in the field and promote the visibility of women in the marine science community. And we were founded in 2014 by a group of early career women scientists at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. But now we're run by volunteer early career scientists from throughout the United States. We have a really amazing board of directors as well, including, I noticed, our own Ngozi, who's here from Nigeria. That's one of our board of directors. So it's really great to see her on board and joining us. And we're also a registered nonprofit organization through the state of Massachusetts. And we have a website, and we'd love for you to join and be a member if you're not already. We have a really wonderful mentorship program that's available to all members. And we have various amounts of, we have 40 chapters throughout the US, including some international chapters. So there might be one in your area that you can join. And just to give you all a sense of who the steering committee is for SWMS, like I said, myself, the president, I'm Trisha Thibodeau. We have our vice president here, Trish Albano, as well as our clerk, Ray Kadara. But we also have a really awesome group of additional folks that are our treasurer, our communications coordinator, our chapter liaison, and our mentor chair. And I just wanted to give us a moment to establish some community guidelines for this discussion so that we can all feel like we're in a safe space here and comfortable sharing. Some agreements and community norms, recognizing that no one knows everything, but together we know a lot. I think that can definitely be said for work-life balance, especially. What's learned here leaves here, and what's said here stays here. Set aside what can wait. So I really invite you to bring in your present selves to this meeting, this discussion. Listen actively, respect others while they're talking, and speak from your own experience instead of generalizing. And during the Q&A, please use the raise hand function and lower it if your question gets answered. You can also put questions in the chat, and we'll work to summarize and field those to our panelists during the Q&A session. And we do ask that during the discussion, just to help with bandwidth, that you turn off your camera and make sure you're muted if you're not already. Oh, good idea. Okay, so we did this last time, and I was really glad we did, but we take a picture of everybody that's in this Zoom call as a way to just show the awesome group of people here attending. So I guess, should we stop sharing, take a quick photo if that's okay? Awesome. Trish, do you mind doing that?
Yeah, I can do it. So I know we just said it would be best if everybody could turn off their cameras for the discussion, but if you wouldn't mind turning them on just for the moment, we love to share our events on social media and on our website. So if everyone wouldn't mind who is available to turn on their camera real quick, we're just going to snap a quick screenshot of the group, and then we will jump right into it. One
You
second
countdown
here.
so we can smile.
I will give you a countdown in just a second. All right. Okay. Ready? 3, 2, 1, smile. Awesome. Well, thank you guys.
Thanks, Trish.
I'll go back to sharing my screen.
All right, and now if you are not a panelist, if you could turn off your camera, that would be great. But we definitely encourage you all to stick around for after the panel discussion at 4 p.m. Eastern, and we'll do some more interactive networking where we'd love to see all of your beautiful faces again. All right, so what we're going to do is have each of the panelists introduce themselves and give you all a sense of not only their career path, but also their full selves as people, and, kind of how their career and their life path has defined their ability to maintain work-life balance, which we'll get into more specifically. But first, we just would like all the panelists to take a turn to share more about themselves. So Lynn, you're up first.
Hi, everybody. It's good to meet all of you virtually anyway. My name is Lynn Trann. I'm currently a program director at the National Science Foundation, and I'm on leave from the Lawrence Hall of Science at UC Berkeley, and I co-chair the Equity and Belonging Committee with Ray at the National Marine Educators Association. So that's like the credentials right now. And I'm also actually, the whole self is that I'm also a mother of 2 children, a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old, right? And all of the chaos that comes with young children and post-COVID, and then working remotely, and the bits of that, and thinking about, I think that to say that thinking about how I've gotten to where I am now, the key thing to come to mind is really that it's not necessarily a job or a career path that I was like. It's not like I went to school striving to become a program director at the National Science Foundation, but it is driven by a pursuit of solving problems and contributing to society, and then following that as my North Star to make decisions on the jobs that I pursue has landed me where I am. And then it keeps what next really wide open for, what could be available. All right, so I'll stop there.
Hi, I'm Kim. Thanks for having me. I'm from the Netherlands. You see, I'm donning my orange shirt today because the Netherlands is playing Argentina as we speak in the World Cup, and I still root for the team. I did my bachelor and master's at the University of Amsterdam, and left for the United States after that. I figured I want to see a bit of the world, but not really stop my career. So doing a PhD as an international student really seemed like the way to go. So I have a PhD from LSU in oceanography and coastal sciences. I got that in 2010, and then did a 1-year postdoc and landed what was a term assistant professor position in 2011. Then was able to get a 10-year track job Am I not? Can everybody hear me well? I see one note of a person that doesn't hear well. Okay, it may not be on my side then. Great. In 2014, I had the opportunity to create a tenure track position from that. So that was 2014. Then in 2015, I had my beautiful daughter. So I stopped the tenure clock and continued on. That was at George Mason University until 2020. In 2020, I was the Associate Director of the Potomac Education and Research Center there. We'll get back into that when we talk about work-life balance. It was a lot. The pandemic came and I started looking around for, seriously, and ended up leaving, going to the University of Southern Mississippi. And I started there January 2021, assistant professor, submitted my package. So tenure is soon to come. It was a bit of a lateral move, of course, but it's a long road, I guess, to get here. And here, my daughter's 7 by now. We enjoy ourselves in Southern Mississippi. I'm mostly a ecological modeler in the type of work that I do, and I'm glad to be here, and I'll talk more in detail about work-life balance after these introductions.
So hi everyone, I'm Suriada Nañez-James. I work for NOAA Ocean Exploration as an education specialist. So I lead a lot of the professional development and product development that we have here at NOAA Ocean Exploration, working with some folks on here that I see. So it's awesome to see familiar faces, hashtag names that I see on the screen now. So that's great. And I just started this position in June, working with Trish. So and I actually met Ray before I actually joined the NOAA team. I also, as you see here, I'm the CEO and founder for a nonprofit called the Go Free Institute. And our focus is STEM education, health, and then also advocacy for underrepresented groups. And it's always been kind of my passion to work with youth and with just communities at large. I do have a degree. I have a degree in marine fisheries from A&M Galveston. So I know Holly went there as well. So it's great to see her. And I was the first one to graduate from high school, and then also with my bachelor's in science. And then I went on to get my master's in science on marine ecology, as well as I did do 2 years at a University of Louisiana Lafayette in environmental and evolutionary biology, and then left. Unfortunately, my mom got sick, and I just never returned. So priorities shifted, but I've had a very blessed career. It's kind of zigzagged around in the things that I've done, but I always say that it's brought me here to meet people like you, right? So even though the path is kind of zigzaggy around, we always get to meet amazing people along that journey that we have. So, but I've always had a passion for education, environmental justice, and just working with our youth. And that's what I focus on the 2 hats that I wear. The nonprofit is mostly in the evenings and the weekends. And I can definitely tell you about work-life balance because it has been a little bit hectic. I do have an 11-year-old daughter, and she's pretty strong-willed. My husband says just like her mama. So, but anyway, just happy to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation, and just ready to share anything I need to share with you all, and if you have any questions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle Perry. I work for MassAudubon as their Coastal Resilience Program Director. I am a child of immigrants. My parents were born in Jamaica. I was born in the States, but having that immigrant upbringing has really influenced a lot of my work ethic and career path. And so definitely want to give credit to that past experience and current experience of mine. So I received my bachelor's degree at the University of New Haven in 2015. And then I received my PhD from the University of Rhode Island in 2020. And so, yeah, I was a COVID dissertation defense child. And so, and I also started my job with MassAudubon about a week before everything shut down for COVID. So when I was working on my degrees, and my undergrad was in marine biology and environmental science, my PhD was in biological environmental sciences. And with all that being said, I really focused on salt marsh restoration and resilience. And that background I was able to bring into my current position with MassAudubon, where I really focus on salt marsh resiliency and climate adaptation all across the coast of Massachusetts. You can see in this description here that we have this ongoing project at our Allens Pond Wildlife Sanctuary in Dartmouth. That's one project that is currently being implemented, but we have a few other projects on the North Shore of Massachusetts and on Cape Cod that are currently being designed for salt marsh restoration. And so since I started working and finishing my PhD right in the midst of COVID, I can tell you a lot about what to not do with work-life balance. Coming from a student, when you feel like you're a student 24/7, and then into the working world, and you feel like you might feel like you have to work 24/7, which I did. And I soon realized that that's not what I should be doing. So I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that later, and how I changed that type of work, that type of ethic, and kind of put up some barriers. So excited to chat more. And again, thanks so much for having me.
Hi guys, so my name is Rose Santana. I was born in Dominican Republic and I was raised in Germany. I did my undergraduate degree at Florida International University, and I'm actually no longer there. So, and that is partially because there was a lot of toxicity and a lot of issues within the graduate sphere. So I can talk a little bit about actually setting up some boundaries for yourself, and knowing when it's okay to step back and remove yourself from a toxic situation. You know, I kind of realized, I was like, this is a PhD, it's a long commitment, it's 5 years. I don't want to spend those 5 years being more miserable than I have to be, because it's already a tough experience. And there's no point in you sort of clubbing it in and like hammering it in yourself. I don't know about you guys, but I know for a lot of minority students, it's like we kind of have this desire to live up to certain expectations and be grander than we need to be. And I think for a lot of us, sometimes we end up putting ourselves into toxic situations because we feel like we have to be able to compete with everybody else. And that's an issue in and of itself. As an undergraduate, I did a lot of work on chemical pollution and how it affects our coastal ecosystems, especially fish behavior, and saltwater intrusion. I kind of looked at the combination of saltwater intrusion and chemicals, and you know what that's doing to our coastal ecosystems and the fish that inhabit it. And it kind of really drove home sort of this necessity for me. Being from Dominican Republic, you know, we're so dependent on the ocean, and we have this love for the ocean, but we don't really know how to protect it. And a big thing for me currently, I also work as a social media lead for Black and Marine Science, which is a nonprofit organization. And part of why I think it's so cool to do what I do is because I get to communicate that to people who normally wouldn't understand it. And it's really cool to sort of bring these complex topics of science, because science can be boring sometimes. Let's be real here, especially, you know, if we go about it the way we have constantly, where we're just throwing jargon at people and people are like, why should I care? It's really cool to sort of take the science and make it into something that's understandable for the everyday person, but also something that's cool for the everyday person to want to learn about. So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for taking the time to share your career path and your life experience. And I'm just so excited about this great group of panelists that come from NOAA and NSF and academia and nonprofits, and just really getting a sense for how you all balance everything you do. So thank you. I'm already inspired. And so we're going to move on now to just a few questions that we had prepared as a steering committee for the panelists. And then we'll have time, about 15 minutes at the end, to have you all share attendance, any questions that you might have that we haven't covered yet. But the first one that I'd like the panelists to address is, you already have talked about this. Rose mentioned BIMS. So what are the affinity groups or nonprofit organizations or other organizations that you're involved with, and how do you balance your commitment to those groups with your day jobs? So Rose, why don't we go ahead and start with you, and we can popcorn it from there.
Yeah, Google Calendar has become my best friend. Because I've actually had to schedule out when I'm going to do what, and I have to sort of prioritize those things. It's like, okay, this is my day job. Like just this week, I'm heading to a conference next in a couple of days, actually. So it was kind of, I had to balance out, like when do I put in work for this, or when do I put in work for that? When do I put in my own, personal social media time? Because, it's easy to sort of forget yourself and get lost doing things for other organizations, and you sort of forget to do things for yourself. So I really had to take a step back and like, all right, like now I schedule like, I don't know, twice a week, like me time where I go out and do something and just go for a walk, because I've learned, like Danielle was saying, it's very easy to get lost in that. I'm a student, so I'm working 24/7, and I've actually made it a deal now. Like I've been trying to get better about like not looking at my emails during the weekends and actually just taking a step away from what you do to just be who you are. You're more than just a job, and it's sometimes easy to forget that, especially in science in general. And yeah.
I'll add to that, Rose, and then I actually have to leave. Unfortunately, everybody, I have talk about work-life balance, the irony of it, and not being very balanced right now, literally for most of perhaps the last 3 years, right? Which I'm sure is a familiar state of things for everyone. So in terms of organizations that sadly, not a whole lot, right? And on the one level, just finding time to do more beyond what I'm already committed to in terms of the work. Been fortunate to continue to work with Ray and the National Marine Educators Association, but then also feeling like Ray being a godsend in us working together, right? And balancing things out and tracking and staying organized. And then actually started doing scouting with my daughter as a way to also spend more time with her, because she's 12, right? And working with young people, and then making myself go outdoors because her troop does a lot of that, right? And so it was a sneaky, I suppose, strategic way of trying to like do a bit for myself, do a bit for her, maintain that sanity, right? With a group of volunteers, also reminding myself actually in terms of work, right? And digging into that empathizing and understanding of organizations that work with young people, right? So then on the meta back end of my head, always looking at the work with scouting in terms of like how we engage with young people and what types of supports that they need. So in the end, she can't turn off work, but you could layer it on in such a way that maybe it actually feeds our soul more than feeling like it's just always sucking from us sometimes, right? When you get to a certain point where it's like, too much. But anyway, that was all that I had to share for that. And I thank you all for inviting me to be here on the panel. And I apologize that I have to step away. Bye-bye, everybody.
Good. Thanks so much for joining, Lynn, and best of luck with your future endeavors in scouting.
Yeah,
I'll go
ahead.
I was gonna say, I'll jump in because you talked about scouting. So I was on the board for Girl Scouts. I was on the board for Hispanic Women's Network. I was on the board for a lot of things. When I started my nonprofit, I had to really prioritize because a lot of them were asking some of the same things that I needed to do for my own nonprofit. So that was very taxing. So I have kept relationships, but I tend to be very, I don't want to say picky, but very cognizant of the organizations that we partner with and how they contribute to our mission. And then kind of like Lynn said, to kind of, the passions that I have as well with environmental justice and equity. And so if it doesn't fit that criteria, then I just say no, right? And that's the thing sometimes we have a hard time saying is no, because we think that's a sign that, oh, we're going to miss out, or so saying no has been great. So, but I mean, it's still a lot, but at the same time, Lynn talked about just kind of overlaying and what overlaps and how I can contribute. And then also, how does that feed me with our Indigenous group here that we're a part of? We work together, but then that also connects me back to my ancestors and my roots. And so it's feeding me at the same time, but we're also working together for the youth particularly in our community here in Corpus. So I would say prioritizing and understanding that we do have the right to say no. And if somebody gets upset, then obviously that was not our space. That was not a good space for us.
I can go ahead and go next. So I was recently elected president-elect for the New England Estuarine Research Society. So that's a new thing that I signed up for, and we'll see how I feel about it in a year or so. I'm also currently the vice chair, but I think because I recently became president-elect, I'm going to step back from being vice chair. So again, don't be afraid to step back from things when you have to be, of the Society of Ecological Restoration Northeast chapter. And I also am a co-founder for the Professionals of Color in the Environment in Massachusetts, which is basically a network of people of color who work in the environmental sector in Massachusetts. We're working on getting our nonprofit status, so wish us luck in that endeavor, and really just connecting like-minded people who are often the only people of color in the room in their everyday job, just providing that safe space, that brave space for just to commune with other folks that can share their experiences or share similar experiences. So I think the best advice that I got from work-life balance is someone said that when folks ask you to do things, you know that they're going to be taking something from you, but what in doing that act are you going to be getting? And if what you receive balances out with what you'll be kind of giving to that activity. So that's kind of one thing that I always think about, like, what am I going to be receiving from this? Will I be receiving anything from this that will positively impact me or give me like food for myself that I need as an individual and as a professional? And if that shows not to be, if it's not something that I need to be involved in, that I don't feel like I'll get a positive aspect from, then maybe that's not something that I need to be involved in, because you really often have to think about filling your own cup up and make it before you drain it too much. As well. And so when I first started with MassAudubon, it was right in the midst of COVID, and I worked nights, weekends, all the time. I never stopped working. And I was just like, I worked there for a couple months and I felt so burnt out. And I'm just like, I feel like this isn't how it should be. And I think setting up boundaries of being, I'm only working until 5, I'm only working 40 hours a week. I'm putting up away messages when I'm not available, so people don't expect to hear from me from my email address. I'm not working on weekends, and just being able to establish those boundaries. And then also, and it's easier said than done too, similar to what has been mentioned before, of like feeling that like FOMO, fear of missing out. I'm like a big proponent of FOMO. Like I always have that feeling. But then also recognizing that if it is something that you're supposed to be a part of, it will be very, very apparent, and not everything that comes your way is something that you need to be a part of. And even with like the current organizations that I'm that I'm involved with, I feel like the most overwhelming is just like the one-time requests, the amount of like one-time requests of doing certain things and how best to manage that, and just being okay with saying no. And usually when I do say no, I say no, but, or can I'm not able to do it now, but are you able to wait this amount of time until I can help you? And if they say they can't wait, then they can find somebody else. And so I usually like to propose an alternative, or to, if I do have to say no, just giving that other person the opportunity. So you kind of feel, in my mind, I think I feel a little bit less bad because I do give them opportunity to wait for me if they would like, and if they don't, then that's okay.
Yeah, I'll weigh in on this. I think for me, it's somewhat easier to involve myself in societies because I have service as part of my job. So it doesn't feel like I'm doing it completely outside of my job, right? So I like professional societies that I'm a member of. I heard a regional society of surf coming by. I do a lot for surf, for the Coastal Estuarine Research Federation. When I lived near DC, I did a lot for AIR, so the Atlantic Estuarine Research Society. I have others. Mostly it's about organizing conferences. I often do something when a society I'm a member of and they organize a conference, either on the program committee or anything like that. For the last 2 years here, I've chaired the Coastal Women in Science, which is a group very similar, I guess, to this one, only or a chapter of this one would be similar to, because it's very small. To me, I feel I moved to Mississippi 2 years ago. This seemed like something that would contribute to the area here. So I think that's, for me, is my consideration. Do I like the people I'm going to work with? Is one that's high up, right? Do I feel this is going to make a difference? And indeed, do I get some self-fulfillment by doing this? And I guess for me, again, what an easy way for me to say yes is that I can also think of, is it going to be valued in my normal job if I do this, and also include that in that evaluation. And that can at times become the higher priority, because there may be a lot of things I enjoy doing, right? And at some point I had to say no still. And at that point, it's really like, you got to create this really short algorithm that you include maybe a goal, I would say. And that's how I do it. And mine was, does it help me get tenure? So what's the answer to that? Yes or no? And that same answer is going back to the request. So that sometimes helps when you feel like, well, I do enjoy doing this, but I'm already doing too much. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Kim. And thanks everyone for your insights. I really appreciate all those tidbits. And Ray, our clerk, is actually taking some notes. And like I said, we're recording this. So, because I definitely want to go back and read through all the suggestions people have had so far, because they're very helpful. And so building on this a bit, could you all talk a little bit more about any more suggestions, or just reiterating some that you've already said, for cultivating a healthy work-life balance in your life? So maybe Kim, will go back to you and move around from there.
Yeah, and it's been already mentioned, but putting a lot of stuff in your calendar and adding your own things in your calendar helps. So, because I had a tendency to put work things in a calendar, right? And then see what's left, and then you'll do something. But when I complete these, 10 doodle polls at the same time, if it's already in my calendar that I'm going to the YMCA, that's not going to be a choice in the doodle poll, right? So I think that helps me to include stuff in my calendar that are not work, so that it actually blocks off some time automatically in a way for doing something else than work. and a very strange advice I have, because it helped for me, and this is, I know, young women think about, should I have children, right? And if your only consideration for not doing it is that you think that you're too busy or you have no work-life balance, I think having a child created work-life balance for me, because I am not as nice to myself as I am to my daughter. So there's no way I was going to take a Saturday off for myself, but there's no way I'm not going to do something with my daughter on the weekends. So it's, I wouldn't really take work pressure as a reason to not have children, right? You will then actually, it will become easier to make time outside of work when you feel you have a bigger reason to do so.
I can jump in. I made some suggestions previously, like putting up an away message on your email when you would like to have time where you don't kind of just want folks to leave you alone for a little while. Say that you are out of office, even if you're not out of office. I know this is being recorded, but that's okay. So that people don't expect you to respond during certain periods of time. We talked about the calendar, like just blocking off time on your calendar that for you to actually get your work done. One thing with when I started with my position, I found myself in like 8 hours worth of meetings, and I'm just like, I'm here talking about all these projects and I have no time to actually do them because all I am is just in meetings talking about them. So again, blocking time off, just blocking off time on your calendars so that you have a space where you can actually do your job and do work. Even or take a break, putting breaks on your calendar as well. And then another thing that was a real eye-opener for me is counting like mental health days as sick days, which shouldn't be like so crazy, like, because your mental health is part of your wellness. It's like considered as well. So one thing that I do is that I take certain maybe like a day or two per month and count it as sick days for my own like mental health days to kind of recharge yourself that you need. And I guess this is all dependent on your job and what they consider, but I would be very surprised if someone came up to being like, you cannot take time for your mental health in this day and age. So I feel like that would be, if they do, then I feel like you can definitely push back on that. So being able to take that into consideration as well, and maybe using some sick days for your own personal well-being. So
I guess I'll chime in right after that. So everything that they said, yes. But then also a little bit about what Danielle said is really taking a reflection and inventory of yourself. And, there's all these aspects of our health and wellness. And I would like to say it's always balanced, but it's not. So what I'm trying to do and what I have done is trying to focus on the things that really the health part that really contributes to other things. Like I noticed that since I started working remotely, even though I had worked remotely, this is a little bit more intense now than, when I was teaching. I wasn't getting up, and, unless thankfully the dog was here because he made me get up and take him out, but I wasn't eating badly, but I wasn't eating great, but really focusing on the things that we really take for granted. And it's like, are you eating healthy? Are you sleeping? Are you exercising? Because those three things will contribute to the intellectual aspect of it, right? Your social aspect of if you're tired and hungry and out of balance, like, I don't want to be in meetings and I don't want to talk to you. And it comes out, and it may not come out, it may come out as rude or something, but it's just that you're tired and you literally burn yourself out because you don't have the health that your body needs to really fuel that energy. When you eat well and you exercise, we all know what to do, but do we actually do it? It's amazing what 8 hours of sleep can do, and not eating takeout every day or even Taco Bell. That's disgusting, by the way. But the fuels that you put in your body, and then having, I agree with Kim, is teaching my daughter to make sure that she takes care of her body, because she's in a lot of things too. She's in sports, she's in after school clubs. And we talk to her also about her work-life balance, because you're going to take this on. What does that mean? Do you know that when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else? And so, have you thought about that trade-off? Because you're going to want to spend time with your friends, but being in club soccer or football, you're going to be gone every weekend. Is that something you want to commit to? Is that okay? And so that's been my thing too, is making sure that I take an inventory about what I'm doing for my own body, because you only get one, and if it ain't working, it ain't doing anything. So.
I think I'm the only one left, right? Yeah, I mean, everybody had great suggestions. One thing that I actually started doing after speaking to my therapist about it, she was actually the one that recommended it, was journaling also, and keeping a planner. For me, writing things down physically helps it. Like, I don't know why, it just kind of cemented in my brain when I actually physically write it down. So my planner has been my best friend this year. For me, because I work at a couple different places and I sort of do different things, it kind of all pulls together, and I have to remember to keep everything in line, but I also have to remember to keep time for myself. At some point, there's a point where I was working at my lab, 60 hours a week, and that's kind of what our boss wanted everybody to do. And you kind of find it hard to find time for yourself when you're just working exhausted every day. So like for me, like, it's important to also take time to do things that are good for you, and I'm not even just talking about like going to the gym and eating healthy, but just like something that you enjoy doing that brings you joy. Like I'm a scuba diver. That's, probably my biggest hobby in paddleboarding. And I really had to make time. Like, okay, like every other Sunday I'm going to go diving, or every other Sunday I'm going to, go paddleboarding and just get out in nature. At some point I realized I was so miserable. I was like, I need to just go sit in my yard and touch some grass for an hour, because academia is driving me up a wall. So it's I feel like those are the things that people don't really talk about, is to do things that you enjoy as well, to take that, not to take that time, to make that time, because a lot of us will make the excuse, oh, I don't have time to do that. Because if I'm out there, scuba diving for 3 hours on Sunday, that's time I'm not working on data, or that's time I'm not, working in a lab or thinking about something else. And, we matter at the end of the day. And like I said, like mental health is like a big thing that often gets pushed aside in academia, and we kind of just try to power through things. And sometimes it's okay to be like, all right, you know what? I'm not going to work right now. I'm going to go do something that's fun and something that I enjoy doing. And, if I'm in the emotion, no one can see my tears, so it's fine.
That's awesome. Thank you, Rose. Go touch some grass, everybody. I love Suriada's comment too. She does salsa dancing, and I like to take my pug on walks. But yeah, feel free to put in the chat what you like to do. And it's true, you got to find some joy. So I think for our last planned question, and then we'll do Q&A. Some of you have mentioned this already, but I think it's really important and something that I always struggle to do. What are effective methods you use for saying no to avoid overcommitment? And how do you avoid doing, non-promotable tasks that typically tend to fall upon women and minoritized groups, like taking notes or cleaning up after a meeting or something like that? So love to hear from you all. Why don't we start with Suriada?
That's been an evolution for me, for sure. So as a graduate student, one, I didn't really know what it was like to be in college, and as you're going through that, so that even though you don't think about it, it starts to shape, right? We're in spaces where we usually were the only people of color or woman. I did fisheries, which is even more, it was even more not inclusive, right? It is now, but that we took, or so this is my narrative, I'm just speaking for myself, I took on those responsibilities because that helped me to fit in, and people liked me, right? So I wanted to be liked and I wanted to be included. But as I got older, I'm just like, hey, like, I see my male counterparts, especially white male counterparts, as they, went up, even my female counterparts, as they went up and in their field, I was still doing the stuff that nobody else wanted to do. So when I started to become aware of that, it was like, it's still pretty difficult, because I think there's still an expectation there, even though you don't think about it. It's almost automatic for people to assume that you're going to do those things. And I think it even falls more with women of color. but is setting your boundaries and just being really clear about what your position is or what your role is in whatever project is being done. If we're all taking notes, then if we're all circulating, taking notes, I don't see an issue with that. But if there's only certain people taking it, and we tend to be more aware of that than others do, then a conversation has to be had. And usually sometimes it's not a comfortable conversation, but that's not, they don't have a problem making me feel comfortable. So I've kind of gotten over that a little bit. It's like, if you don't feel comfortable, then that's not my issue. I'm just going to tell you how it is. This is I'm a professional just like you. And if you can't meet those boundaries and standards, then we have an issue. So good luck on that, because you get different responses. But if you don't establish that as a norm, because a norm has been that y'all will do the other stuff, we will do the important things. We need to make it a norm that we share all the administrative stuff if it needs to be done, but we are also part of this project or whatever that you're doing. I hope that makes sense.
I can go. And it took me a while to learn this, and I'm honestly glad I learned it very early on in my scientific career. Yeah, I was like, I learned it the hard way, but I learned it early on. So hopefully that sets a strong foundation for the future. I've learned that no is a full sentence. I don't owe you an explanation to my time. No is no. I've been voluntold to do things, and at some point I started just telling them, okay, well, this is my hourly rate. And then all of a sudden people back off. And they're like, well, how are you going to compensate me for all of the things that you want me to do? And it was especially true in a lab, where we're in a university in general, where, I'd be asked to do certain things, or I'd be asked to, one time somebody kind of just voluntold me to be on a panel for disadvantaged students. And I was just like, well, first of all, that's racist. How do you know I'm disadvantaged? It's kind of pushing through those things. And I've really learned that sometimes it's just I'm not interested in this, and it's okay to say no. And if they push back against that, that's an issue that they have to have. I've also stopped sugarcoating things, where I'm kind of just very straight to the point. I was like, it's nice to give you an explanation, but I don't owe you one. And if that makes you uncomfortable, that's something that you need to deal with. Your insecurities are not my responsibility. And it really goes back to what everybody was saying, certain things of, will this benefit me? At some point we had an event, we were hosting an event, and my advisor basically just came to me. He's like, well, I want you to be the server. And I was like, do I look like a waitress to you? I'm a graduate student. If you want someone to cater your event, go hire someone. And it's kind of that point where it will rub people the wrong way. And at this point, I've come to the conclusion that I'm okay with rubbing people the wrong way. I've made up my mind in that sense of, it's okay to quote unquote disappoint people. It's, not my job to sit there and be your IT person and be your, note taker and be your caterer and be your server and basically just be at your beck and call, because we're still people at the end of the day, and we're students and we're scientists, and that often gets pushed aside. And if it's not going to benefit me in the long run, I don't see why I should invest all of this time and energy and effort when it's not even something that you yourself as an advisor or as a boss is willing to do. Why don't you think about being a better boss? You take the notes. Oh, no, can't do that. You're an old white man with a PhD. So no is a full answer. Don't spread yourself too thin. What's the saying? Don't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. It's you want heat, set yourself on fire, bud.
I can chime in. Love all of that. I think another thing too is thinking that the world is going to end if you say no. The world will continue to spin, and they will find somebody else. You are not the only one who has the capabilities or to do whatever someone is asking you to do. They will, and I'm sure they have a list, and they'll just keep going down it until they get whatever answer they'd like to get. So don't feel like it's the end of anything if you ever have to say no. And then I think I mentioned this before of when I'm putting in a position to, I call it a disguised no. I say something like, I can do it, but it has to wait like this amount of time. And usually like everyone I was unfortunately is last minute, and usually they can't wait. So, and so that gets me off the hook. Or if I say no, I suggest somebody else who might be a better fit for that. And that person might be upset with me, but you gotta do. So suggest somebody else who might be also be a better fit for whatever is being asked of you as well. So yeah, that's some of the things that I do. I'm still working on it. I need to get better at saying no. I'm still working out the FOMO issue. And I think also it's just a cultural thing too, because being a person of color, especially in the environmental science field, the opportunities are not evenly spaced. So when I was like growing up and through undergraduate and graduate school, I didn't know when other opportunities were going to come. So whenever an opportunity presented itself, I felt like I had to grab it because I didn't know when the next one was going to happen, or I was so establishing myself. So I felt like I couldn't say no because I still needed to gain that experience and so on and so forth. But at a certain point, like, especially once you start working and you're working in the job, you're like, you think to yourself, like, okay, like I did it, I achieved it, I got the degree, I got the job. Like, why am I spreading myself so thin now when I'm living, I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. So then making sure to acknowledge that in yourself, that you don't have to work the same way that you might have had to do in the past when you were kind of getting up there. And in also even as a student, and I think that's has been like in the past, like the stigma that the students have to take unnecessary, like I don't take crap, excuse me my French, but take unnecessary things because they're a student and they're considered some type of way. And so just being able to know your value as a student, you're still a human being, and there's only certain things that you should be doing, and just having that boundaries, even with your advisor, and not being afraid to place that boundary. And I think things are kind of getting a little bit better. I hope so, for students now, and not being asked to do, or let's say students feeling more empowered to say no and not do all the things that they might have been assumed to have to do previously. So
yeah, I want to add, I'm really encouraged by these strong answers. I think for me, it was all much slower than that. Maybe like Suriada was saying as well, just this evolution, right? So I'm glad to hear the evolution gets shortened. I definitely in the beginning thought it was a status thing, right? So of course I was doing all these extra things because I don't have the status, and maybe in this way I'm going to gain it, right? I think you can turn that around in a way too. So what I do now, I still do a lot more in collaborations, mainly because I'm good at it, and I will make sure we get the stuff done, right? So what I do now is kind of an all or nothing approach. Like if I'm never like, oh, we had so much help from this person in the shadows. That would not be me. I'm either not doing it, or I am the PI, the first author, or, the lead, or the chair. And then it's like, yes, I am doing all the things, but I get recognized for doing all the things. Even at taking the notes, that's basically when I'm the chair that I will take the notes, but not when I'm not, right? So I'm not sure if my solution is the best. I'm still doing all the things, but there are those choices, like, do I get recognized for it? And definitely as a student. And so it's not just, pouring the coffee, right? It's also basically doing everything for a paper and not even becoming an author. So I have a long history of that type of stuff until I would, step up and say, yes, I can write this. Will I be first author? Can we do an email exchange about this conversation, right? And those were really kind of my steps towards becoming more assertive that, you know, if it is to be me, I want it in bold letters that I'm the one doing this, and otherwise I'm not doing it. So that's at least my concession.
Those are great suggestions, and thank you all. And my pug has decided to learn about work-life balance as well. But I just wanted to thank you all, especially given, you know, we're talking about one-off requests. And I just want to thank you all so much for making the time to attend this webinar and share with us your experiences. And it's been invaluable. I would like to take, if we have a little time, 5 minutes, for questions from the audience. Folks can either unmute themselves and ask their question or type it into chat. We also do have a couple more prepared questions that we can ask, but I do want to be respectful of folks' time for the discussion portion of this. So yeah, I'll give the floor a moment to ask any questions that they might have of the panelists.
I have a question. Should I keep my video off?
I should have said, feel free to put your video on.
Okay, because then you just have to guess. Hi, thank you guys so much. It has been so wonderful hearing from all of you, and so invigorating. And so the themes about, and it's kind of like a dichotomy also about saying no and not having to explain yourself, but then also feeling like you have to meet someone halfway. And I think that for me, I struggle so much with knowing when to do one or the other. And I think maybe I know the answer already, but how do you guys kind of discern between, you know, I'm just going to say no and I'm going to let them deal with however they feel, versus, you know what, this is a time when I'm going to make time to say I can't do this because XYZ. And it's just like an internal struggle that I have. I don't know if others have that. But I'd like to hear if anyone has any strategies.
I think, well, I'll just say something real quick. I guess just filtering it again. So there's been times where I've said no to organizations or individuals that have helped me. But they also, so I do explain to them, I don't have the time now. I appreciate you asking me, but I can contribute this way, because I know that again, it's reciprocal, right? They're going to ask me, I'm going to ask them to do something. So for that, I think they deserve an explanation, just because I think they're going to understand. And if they don't, then they don't really honor who you are. But it's a lot easier for me to say no to folks that I know are just asking me for it to benefit them. And you can kind of start knowing who that is. The ones that just keep asking for that kind of diversity card, especially for me, the diversity card, but never compensate, nothing ever comes of it. They just make sure they're checking a box for them, and they know that I can represent a specific group or whatever it is that they're doing. It's really easy to say no. So I think you can examine the relationships that you have maybe with the organizations, and then decipher if you're going to be, it's a hard no, or it's going to be, you know, hey, kind of know what Danielle said. It's like, okay, but if you can wait, or I just can't do it right now, but think of me in the next 6 months for the next event that you're going to have, et cetera. It just depends. I don't know what anybody else thinks.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do about who's asking, because if it's depending on who's asking, what your relationship you have with that person. Oftentimes I ask myself, okay, if I say no to this person, will my life change in any way? And usually it's no. So will their reaction impact my life in any way? And usually it's no. So then that's kind of helps me decide, okay, does this person really need an explanation, or can I just say no and continue with my life, my unimpacted life by this individual? So that's usually what helps me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's similar. I weigh my options in the sense of, you know, how is this going to benefit me? You know, how am I going to benefit it? because I do want to be fair, you know, I want to be able to bring something to the table. But a lot of times I sort of get these one-off weird requests where it's kind of like, you can just blatantly tell. It's like, well, we need some sort of racial and gender minority here. And in that case, it's just, nah, I'm good. You know, good luck though. But it's really sort of weighing those relationships and whether I want to continue having a relationship with this person, organization in the future. Because if, you know, something's just like really stuck. I've seen organizations that just really suck. And I'm like, I do not feel bad about burning this bridge. You know, I don't ever want to cross it again anyways. But if it's an organization that, you know, has helped me or that I do want to just maintain that friendly relationship with, because I know that maybe in the future some collaboration can come from it, then I try to be a little bit more diplomatic about it if I really just don't have the time. It's kind of just like, you know, offer a solution or an alternative, but you can't split yourself in two.
Did you ask about committee work too?
Yeah, thank you. I the way that everyone answered was super helpful, and everyone kind of was linked it to like an organization us. But I think that it's a little bit more hairy when you're talking about like you're working on a volunteer base or in a committee or where you're doing the volunteer work. And I think the same answers can be applied, but it's a little bit trickier because you're having a personal relationship, an ongoing relationship with those individuals.
I know for my volunteers, for the organization that I run too, is that they have really clear expectations. And I think that's, so they know that what they're expected to do when they volunteer. That way, if anything, and we tell them like, if it goes past this is something that we will ask you to do. You can say no, like we give them that out. For committees, it was always more of a time thing. If I knew that I couldn't commit to it, why would you want somebody on a committee that's going to do a pretty crappy job? So that usually kind of helps. So tell them it's like, I just don't have the time, because you just literally don't have the time to do everything.
Thanks,
Yeah, I find it hard indeed when you have already said yes to a certain position and you underestimated the amount of work, right? So I think in practice, I muscle through and then I'll know next time kind of thing. And there will always be a next time, right? So sometimes indeed the one-offs are these huge time commitments that I didn't see coming, and then they'll come around again next year, and then that would be one that I say no to. So at some point, people asking things of you, and just and other people will realize the expectations has to be set clear from the start, or you'll sooner be inclined to say no. And then when I do say yes, then I'm like, all right, this is apparently what I'm going to do. And if it's unclear, then yeah, I would sooner say no to not get into that situation that it ends up being a lot more work. So that's kind of that, you know, weighing off the yes and no answer too. Like, do I know exactly what I'm saying yes to? And if not, then ask questions or say no.
And then just one quick suggestion too. I love the idea of like having like co-chairs for things, if that's an opportunity, is like having a partner. So it's not, you don't feel like everything falls on you. And if you do all of a sudden have a lot of things going on, that you have someone else that you can rely on. So if there's opportunities where you can kind of have a partner buddy, I always take advantage of things like of opportunities like that.
That's great. Thank you all for those responses. Let's go ahead and we'll take this question from Carolyn, who has her hand raised, and then we can move on to more of our happy hour.
Thanks, Trisha. So I was wondering if the panel could speak to navigating saying no, setting work-life balance in the face of power differences. Particularly, I'm luckily finishing graduate school right now, but I know some of us may be grad students where power imbalance is definitely very stark. But now, even if I'm working full time, you know, I still have a boss that sits over me. So yeah, navigating how to say no and how to actually maintain that work-life balance when, you know, you're having to say those things to someone in a position of power over you.
wow, as someone who was a graduate student and I had major issues with my advisor, it kind of, and it's a little difficult because I understand what you're saying. Like I was afraid of like upsetting this person because I'm like, I'm still really dependent on this person for my future career. But it's and it sort of is what gave me the understanding that it's okay to step away. And I know for some people it's a little bit more difficult to make that decision, but I encourage people to do it. It's okay to step away, especially if you realize that, especially if you're just starting out or you have the possibility to just sort of step away, or even get someone from your department who can speak on your behalf and try to mediate a little bit. I know sometimes it's really rough to just go at your advisor and be like, hey, I don't want to do this, and I think you kind of suck. So I found that having sort of external help is very helpful, because you also have someone there who can, it sounds awful, but I was like, I'm glad I have someone here who's a witness as well. And just trying to go find, someone in your department who can advocate for you, because sometimes it needs to come from somebody else who's not a student maybe to get that advisor or, that supervisor to like, okay, well, maybe this is something that I'm pushing a little too hard, or maybe this is something that I need to change. Students often get dismissed, and I've, been lucky that I built a great support network for myself, and I have people who will step in on my behalf now, which is sometimes just what needs to happen.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think thinking of who's in your corner, and that's definitely something I didn't realize as well. I've switched universities, I've switched PhDs. So at some point, when you feel there's no good, way to deal with the situation, that would be, your final opportunity as well, right? Start looking around, because there's probably always that power imbalance. An advisor is an advisor and you're the student, right? But there's lots of good advisors out there as well. So, if you feel it just doesn't work and it takes work. So for me, for example, as an international student, as soon as I quit a lab as a student, I have to leave the country the next day. So there's got to be overlap. So you already arrange what you're going to do next before you can do it. So that's kind of your final out. And I think before that, this is a typical situation where no may not be your only full answer, right? So if you're saying no because you don't have time, we'll gather that proof. There's time trackers, there's all kinds of things you can do to very calmly and politely show, okay, if this is important, because sometimes, these advisors know exactly what the priorities are, and you may not know exactly what it is you should be doing. If this is indeed what I should be doing, look at all the time I'm spending. I cannot do that anymore, or pick from the other things if I don't have that insight, what I should drop then, right? So I think, as soon as there's a power imbalance, your no answer is going to have to be longer, and it's going to have to be prepared better with exact proof and all that of why you cannot do that certain thing, or what else you should not do if you are to do that certain thing.
Yeah, and just to build off of what Kim said, sometimes I call it the guilt approach. So if someone like my boss or my previous advisor asks me to do something else, I list all the other things that I'm doing, which will either make them feel being like, okay, you have too much going on, never mind, or exactly what Kim said, they will say, okay, you don't have to do this anymore, so you can make time for this. So I think it's just making it very clear all the other things that they're asking you to do, because they're still your supervisor. And I think it's also very telling that even after you kind of list off all of the things that you're doing, and they're still like, I don't care, just figure it out. I think that says a lot about your advisor, and maybe they're not the best advisor for you. So I think either way that you can get some good information from that.
I like what everyone said, and also Caroline, that's also a good skill for when you go out of the lab, because learning how learning what your tasks should be, clarifying those tasks, what is your role, etc., will help you in the long run. You've seen kind of all of the different experiences. With mine, I actually gained my voice in, when I was getting my master's, and he was very young, he wanted to get tenure. But, the other side was I did have a big support system, and, I knew the dean. She was my mentor. She was my mentor of the college. So if I had issues, he knew that it was a certain time where he could do stuff, right? And I think he knew in the back of his mind what he could and couldn't do. But yeah, we kind of went head to head. That probably wasn't the best thing. Ironically, I did not burn that bridge, and we still talk and do some things together collaboratively. I think he's grown, matured a little bit more, but he also knows that I have boundaries with him, and he knows the expectations with me. And I think that was established even as a graduate student. And it was a very different situation because I'm like, you can't do that. I'm like, why don't you ask the person who actually did it? And my husband was actually in the lab with me, which is ironic. And he's like, if I ever talk to him that way, he's like, I'd be fired. How do you get away with it? But it was just a different relationship with that. But I love just making sure like this, have a list, and then also know when it's time to go. Unfortunately, that may happen. Hopefully that's not your situation though.
And I want to flip that question around too, about things that you want to make time for that your advisor might not find value in. And just further stress that your advisor doesn't need to know everything that you're doing. And so you don't have to share everything with your advisor. And if there's certain things that you think are going to benefit you that they might not find value in, but you know what you need to accomplish for yourself, just don't tell them. And just and being able to make it work for you as well. Because one thing that was very clear to me when I was in graduate school is that I didn't want to go into academia, and so my advisor wanted me to stay in the lab and work on my on data analysis and dissertation, all this other stuff, which obviously I did, but I knew that was a pathway to academia, and I wanted to go into more applied work. So I did internships. I volunteered, I in Rhode Island, so Save the Bay, I volunteered with them. I worked for like a policy agency, I volunteered for them. And what I did was that all that work that I did in these internships, I made it a part of my dissertation and part of my research so that I could do both and appease both what I knew I had to do for my professional growth, as well as what I needed to accomplish for my dissertation and my degree. So in those situations too, being able to recognize when you need to do things for yourself, and if your advisor doesn't support it, they don't need to know about it.
That's a great point, Danielle. And I will confess that I also do that quite a bit too. Recognizing what's important for myself professionally and just outside of my direct research. So I also just wanted to point folks to the comment that Trish made about codes of conducts and labs. And I'll just make a point. I'm at the Graduate School of Oceanography at URI, and like we've been making a push at our institution about this, because I do think it's a really good way, also just in classrooms that you teach, to like help hold everyone accountable. And if someone does breach the contract, you can go back to it and refer to it, and you have this living document that you all helped to develop together. So I think that's a great suggestion and something for us to leave with. So I think for the purpose of time, we'll go ahead and close the discussion portion of our panel discussion today. I again want to thank all the panelists for their insights, just so many great ideas and suggestions, and I'm just so appreciative of you all making the time for us. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Ray and Trish. I hope you all can stick around, but I also respectful of your work-life balance. So if you feel like this is the time that you need to take to go touch some grass, I'm totally supportive. So with that, Ray and Trish, it's all you.
Thanks, Trisha. So Ray, we blocked off 2 hours for this just because our SWMS mission, as much as We're an organization driven to advancing career development for women in marine science, but it's also a great way to get to know each other and to make some friends and some connections, even in this virtual space from wherever we're joining in from. So we wanted to reserve some time too for a little bit of a social hour, networking fun time on this Friday evening. So we put together some fun icebreakers for us. And if you are able to stay, that's great. If you have to run, that's totally cool too. But I'll just go back to share my screen real quick.
And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.
We don't all need to hear about our cute pets, as cute as, you know, and fun as they are.
And feel free to unmute yourselves, turn your cameras on.